Welcome back to another High Vibe conversation. I'm your host, Shel Shapiro, and with me today we have Linda Vetrus Nichols, Jenny Langren, Dorit Carlson, and our special guest, Iana Daniels. We're excited to talk about blame and shame today. And before we get started, I want to remind you that this is a safe space. We invite you to share with us as we talk through our life lessons and hold space for you to work through yours. So, what this means, whether you are watching live or on the replay, if at any point you resonate with the things that we're talking about, if you have anything you want to add to the conversation, if you want to share your own life experience and journey and insights with us, please feel free to drop that into the chat. We will try our best to get back to you at any given time, whether that's on the live or on the replay. Also, if you would like to chat with one of us individually for your own high vibe conversation, here's a link where you can book with one of us to have those conversations more privately. And if you are really craving high vibe conversations, which we hope you are, you can catch up on the previous conversations by subscribing to the YouTube channel seen below. I'll also share this link and others at the end of the show as well, so that you don't have to go searching for it. And without further ado, I'm going to once again introduce you to Iana Daniels, our special guest for today. And just like, oh my God, before even Iana comes off mute, I just have to say I'm so excited to have her here because I have witnessed her journey firsthand for the last year and a half, maybe even more. And now you all get to share in this journey with her. So Iana, we are so thrilled to have you here with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Shel. And I am excited to be here to share part of my journey with everyone. I am Iana Daniels, retired Army veteran, currently teach yoga and work with other women. And for me, it's about helping other people transition gracefully and confidently. In life, we go through changes and transitions, and every time we have a new transition, we treat it as if we've never been there before, but we have. And we just have to be confident that each of us have everything that we need for every transition. And more importantly, there are a whole lot of people that have done this before you, and sometimes we are too afraid to reach out because we think we are the only one going through something. So we're all in this together and about reaching down and helping someone else. And I'm excited to share more of that. Thank you, ladies.
And wow, we really are all in this together, but you've got some support coming in over here in the comments. So I just want to pop some of those up for you so that everybody can see how wonderfully supported you are. Ooh, I feel this. I feel the love here. I'm so excited to have you guys here. I'm excited for you to be part of this conversation. Iana, when we talk about blame and shame, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, but for anybody else who's seeing you and hearing you for the first time, let's give them a little bit of insight into who you are and your journey. What's coming up for you when we first talk about blame and shame?
Oh, where do I start? So I will start from a trauma perspective. You know, I've experienced quite a bit of trauma in my life, and for a long time, I did not open myself to speaking about it so that I can begin to heal. And part of that came from being ashamed of my experience. And part of it is cultural. I'm from Guyana, and growing up in Guyana, the idea of going to therapy was a foreign idea. If you had a problem, you go to grandma, and she say, drink some tea, or you go to the pastor, or you just held it in. And I did that. I held in a lot for about 30 years. And it was because of that, even though by that time I'd already migrated to the States and going to therapy, I was more open to it. But I resisted it first because culturally, talking to someone else about your problems, especially anything that happened in your family, is looked down upon. And so we hold ourselves back from reaching, our highest potential because of shame, either shame that is imposed upon you culturally or shame that you come up yourself with because you feel that if you reveal something, the people you love most will be disappointed in you. And, all of us, we don't want to disappoint mommy, daddy, best friend, sister, community. We want to always show them the best of us and the best parts of us. So when it comes to being vulnerable and revealing things that we've experienced that may be perceived as bad or not the best, we hold those in because we don't want them to think any less of us. And I know I'm not the only person that's been through that, but that is what is coming up for me from some of our conversations, Shell.
Yeah, and it's something that we've discussed time and time again. As far as like the blame part of that, did you was there ever a time that like you felt the blame coming from your family members, from your friends, or did you put that blame on yourself? Where does that blame come in?
Oh, that's deep. So it's two things. So there was a blame that I put on myself. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the eldest child for my parents. So I put a lot of blame on me because for me, as the eldest, I should be setting the example in everything I do, in every area and facet of life. And anything that I was less than, some perfect standard that someone said or I thought I was, I blamed myself for not being there. And then on the flip side, there were times when I blamed my parents. Like if they did not, then I would not have. And I know we've had the discussion before. Like, we need to stop blaming our parents because our parents are not beings, they're not things, they're not robots. Our parents were once children who had parents. And our parents probably went through some trauma that their parents also went through. So everything our parents have done with us, they've done the best with the tools that they were given. And part of forgiveness is recognizing that our parents are human and they will make mistakes and they've made mistakes. But then now that, we know better. So we can use the knowledge that we've gained to change our lives for the better.
I love that. That's like that generational healing that's really heavy duty these days. And I'm so happy it's going on and all these young moms and realizing where the past generations have been coming from and really changing that. I think that's been super exciting. So thank you for the work you're doing, Iana.
So much goodness here. Thank you, Ayana, for sharing a little bit more about your background and your experiences with it. I'm curious as well to hear about like what you've been doing, not just for yourself, but to help others overcome the blame and shame that they might be feeling now too. You mentioned that you do yoga, you help women transition. So can you speak a little bit more to that?
So yoga has been a very big part of my life by accident. Since 2016, I started yoga for myself because I couldn't run anymore because of bad knees, and I was looking for something else to help me heal physically, mentally, and one of my therapists recommended yoga. So I started taking private lessons, and next thing I know, I'm sitting in a yoga teacher training. I don't quite understand what happened in between. It was a blur. But for me, it was a blessing because as someone who's been through sexual trauma, the one big thing that yoga does, it helps you connect with your body and it helps you take back the ownership that you surrendered or either voluntarily or involuntarily to someone else. So it helps you take back that body autonomy and body ownership. Also, It helped with flexibility and mobility, but I connected more with the spiritual practice because, yoga is more than the physical practice of asanas and postures. It is a practice of breathing and meditation. And as someone who's gone through anxiety, the breathing, learning breath work and meditation, and learning to be still even for 2 minutes is very beneficial. My yoga work is focused with veterans. So I work a lot with veterans and other people who have experienced trauma, and it could also be with special conditions. So one of my students is a cancer patient. So I work with her to help her recover from the chemotherapy sessions and then just to give her some peace of mind. And I find that very rewarding because I get to share part of my healing through yoga with others.
I love every little part of that, from the breath work to like the reframing your mind to helping heal your body from the inside out. Jenny, I am coming down to you right now because I know you can relate to a lot of the things that Iana's been talking about.
I can. And also my mind is going business right now because I want to define the difference between blame and guilt, or shame and guilt. Because let's go to shame. Shame is it's the story I'm telling myself about who I am. Whereas guilt is connected to behavior. So when I work with bosses and managers, sometimes it's hard to distinguish the two. And when working with your team, it's easy to start feedbacking on the story that you have about who they are or the people that you think they might be. And when it comes to feedback, it's so important to recognize that when we shame our people, or when we're approaching them with a story of who they are as if they are bad, it gives them the experience that they can't change, that they can't wake up tomorrow and make a different choice to have a different outcome. So recognizing that feedback is really about behavior. This is what I'm seeing. This is the consequences that I'm seeing and how it's affecting me or the team. Now, what do you think? Like, how do you want to work with this? How do you want to choose tomorrow? What's your perspective? Is such a healthy way to approach it without shaming our people. So that was really what was coming in. And also in my own life, shame and the shooting has been so connected with procrastination. When I feel like, I shouldn't even be here. I shouldn't even be in this situation, or I have to do this. I'm probably going to mess it up. I'm probably not going to do a good job. That's the story sometimes that I tell myself. It keeps me from even making a choice. It keeps me from even moving forward, and it keeps me in procrastination. So I know me and Linda has done a lot of work around that. And when you really remove the shame and the blame and the guilt, it's like you're so free. It just is. And I can wake up tomorrow and I can choose differently. And there's no tension and there's no judgment and there's no, I have a Swedish word in my head. I can't really find it in English, but you're so free to just choose differently. And it's interesting. And thank you, Iana. It makes it so approachable from you sharing your own personal story. So thank you for doing that with us.
Thank you, Jenny. Two things are coming up for me. I love that you took the word feedback, and just like in one of the previous high vibe conversations where you turned something that was a thing into a verb, I think you said feedbacking, and I was like, ooh, I've never thought about it in this way. You turned it into the action, and I love that. The other thing that was coming up as you were sharing is bringing back the choice that we get to choose whether we hold on to that blame and shame, or just let it go and make new choices and decisions for ourselves every single day when we wake up. And It's just such a good reminder that we don't have to hold on to all of or any of the things from the past. We get to decide whether or not we want to be somebody different, if we want to show up differently, if we want to have different experiences, if we want a different outcome. And all of that would not be possible if we were still holding on to the blame, the shame, and some of the guilt, as you've both shared. So thank you for bringing that up. Before I move over to Dora and Stina, I want to, Iana, share some of the lovely women that are still joining us to support you today. So you have still a plethora of women coming in to show their love and support for you, as they share in the comments. And this is just beautiful to see. I don't know if we've ever had so many lovely women show up all in one space at one single
Yeah,
time,
some
but
of them,
I'm here
some
for it.
of them, some of them are my sorority sisters, and some are people I've worked with. So yeah, it's getting emotional. Don't show me that again. I'm gonna cry.
Oh. Well, we want to thank you for all being here, and we certainly are excited to support Ayana, and we're so excited that you're here to support too. I think this is a confetti drop moment because there's just so much love in the air, and I can't not. We haven't done it in a while, so I just want you to feel the love and the warmth and support around you. So Dorit, I'm coming down to you right now. What's coming up as we're talking more about blame and shame today?
Thank you, Shell. Listening to Ayana and hearing how she grew up, reading her story in the introduction beforehand, and this was so different from how I grew up here in Norway. I was blessed to be in a really good family and had a lovely childhood and all that. Strict parents and very strict grandparents, but that made me become the good girl, the one that wanted to do everything right all the time, because I wanted to be the best that I could be. And that wore me out, and I had a burnout. And yeah, but yeah, I can feel that I was carrying a lot of the blame and the shame if I didn't do my very best at all times and checking all the boxes and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and just flipping everything on its head just to make sure that I did everything perfectly all the time. And it was so stressful. And if I didn't do that, I was beating myself up. And I remember the boss that I had in the pet shop before the burnout, he was a sneaky one. So he would lay out little, I call them traps. He wanted all his workers up until he had a lot of young girls working there, and they were not very thorough sometimes. So he was used to laying out these traps. And when he did it with me, I was heartbroken. I could do the floors, for instance, and I could suddenly find like a fistful of crisps in the department with the dog cages. There was no reason why there should be crisps hidden in a corner or like behind one of the cages, and it was obviously placed there. So, and he did that, things like that all the time. So I couldn't just swipe over the floor and be done with it and go on to the next thing. I had to move things. And what if he's put something else behind somewhere else? And what if he's this yeah. And I was worried that he would like blame me and I would not be the good worker that I was trying to be if he did that. So to be able to break free from that was so tremendously wonderful. And like I'm not practicing yoga, but I do practice meditation. My form for yoga is walking the dogs out in nature here in Norway. So that's my healing. But doing the meditation and doing the work in the subconscious mind, and kind of visiting those memories, and just acknowledging that they're there, kind of took the whole power out of it in a way. It inflated them. So I was able to kind of see them for what they were, and move past them, and they're no longer valid contracts. They're no longer valid in my life like they were like 30, 40 years ago. I'm in my 50s now, and I'm not like 10 years old and trying to impress my mom, you know. So that just being able to silence those voices and inflate those memories was lovely. So it's really important work that you do, Iana, because carrying those baggages of blame and shame is horrible. Mine is nothing compared to a lot of people carrying around. But yeah, so that's my little story.
Well, let me stop you there for a second, because one, it's not little. It's not little. So please don't minimize what you've gone through and compare yourself to anybody else's, because you went through what you went through, and it was yours, and you own it, and it doesn't matter what anybody else was going through compared to that. It is what it is, right? And it gets to be what you want, what you make it now. So I love hearing you share your story about how you've minimized that baggage that you were holding on to. The image that's coming to me is like setting it on fire. Like you've just blown it all up and like been able to shed that. So it's still there. You still have that story, that memory, that experience, but now you keep it at a distance, and you can, so in a way that you can learn from it. And I love that. I love hearing you share how you've been able to overcome it and move forward. So yeah, please don't ever minimize your experience, because it's what makes you you, and it's the reason that you are you today, and that we get to see you glow and shine and wear your crown.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh my!
I don't know if you know this, folks, but Dorit wears her crown, and we can see it shining, and now you all get to see it shining too.
No, now you're gonna make me cry. Thank you.
Yeah, please don't make me cry. I'm like really close there too. One of the things that was coming up for me, as you were sharing too, was recognizing that my experience with burnout was a lot about blame and shame too. I did resonate with the same good girl persona, but I was also in a fear spiral, a fear loop of, similar to the roller coaster experience that you may have read in the post leading up to this event, from Iana, of how she describes it, like we just hold on for the ride, and like whatever comes of it comes of it. But like I was in this fear loop of feeling like if I didn't show up, if I wasn't good enough at every single moment, if I dropped a ball from doing all the things, that there was something then wrong with me. And so when there were certainly external forces that made me feel like I was under constant like supervision, and somebody was trying to set me up to fail, and I had to be perfect all the time. But there were also internal factors that then compounded on that to make me keep spiraling. Now coming out of that, I can recognize that I don't need to have all the balls up in the air, juggling them all the time. Like I can get off that roller coaster anytime I want to. I can even make it go in reverse if I want to, and like experience it in a reverse engineered, like looking at it from a new perspective kind of lens. And that for me puts more joy back into it, because I get to see it from a different perspective of like, oh, okay, this is what it actually was, and what I want it to be, what I need it to be. And it has nothing to do with what it was in that moment anymore. Again, it's still my experience with it, but now I get to look at it from a different, fresh perspective over and over and over again, as many times as I choose to, and take out of it whatever I want. And that helps me release the blame and shame that, again, was externally put on me, but also that I put on myself. And that feels pretty damn good. So thank you for helping me connect the dots from Iana's story to your story, Dorit, to Jenny's story, to Linda's story. And I know Stina's got so many more connections here to make. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have missed her in the beginning. That was not an accident. Now I get to introduce her for the first time, but not the last time today. Stina Marie, we're excited to have you join us here. I know you've been tuning in to the blame and shame conversation of today, so we'd love to hear your insights too.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, so what was coming up for me around blame and shame is kind of tied into the conversation we were having last week around narcissism, is that the shame and blame really keeps us focused on other people and really not tuned into ourselves. And when we move out of those and kind of detach from those, because it's like coming from another person, right? We always feel that pressure of the shame and the blame. And so when you kind of like move back from it and can detach and see that this isn't fully about you, this is really about this other person's perception or their comfort level, right? Like, people don't like to be uncomfortable. They don't like to get into conflict typically because they don't have the skills or the tools to handle those things well. And so it turns into a shame and blame kind of game where if we're more of the people pleaser type or the codependent type, we take that on and then we feel like we have to fix it. And when you're detached from it, you can actually tune into your own, internal compass. You can feel actually what's right for you and not right for you. And, you can have more of a sense of yourself. And that's when I think you can feel a healthy guilt. You can feel a healthy conviction that says, I made a choice that was actually out of integrity with myself. Or you can kind of evaluate, oh, I don't like the consequences of these decisions or of these actions. And I find in parenting that when you're creating a space that is free of shame and blame, like, it's human nature to kind of expect that to come up. Like, I've seen this recently with one of my kids where, like, I asked him a question and he's like, what are you going to do with the answer to this question? Like, he was kind of like suspicious. And I said, I'm helping you reflect. I'm helping you explore, like, what's going on for you? What's motivating these actions? How are you feeling about the results that you're getting? How are you feeling about the decisions that you're making? And I just see how much can kind of like flourish in that space where you can actually assess yourself and you can feel, like Jenny was saying, like, that you can wake up and make a new decision, that you have this autonomy and power and influence, over things. And that it's something you get to decide and that you get to fuel, and not something that someone else always gets to decide for you what's right or wrong or what you should do or shouldn't do. There's a great number of things in life that we are taught matter so much. And then as you grow older, you realize that, like, they don't, that there are a lot of decisions that you can make in a day, a week, a month, a year that, like, ultimately don't really matter, but can make your life so much better, right? Like, you can make all of these decisions for yourself about how you run your days, how you run your house, how you interact with friends and family, the boundaries that you have. And they're just decisions for you. And it's okay if other people don't like them, but ultimately it's not about how they're living their life. It's about how you're living your life. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. It's something that I seek to instill in my kids, is that self-awareness and awareness of what they have control over and don't have control over, and how their actions, influence the world, and what consequences or results they get. So I find that to be far more valuable than being in control as a parent, and trying to kind of manipulate through the shame and the blame. It's a long game to play. It's a longer game to play. Shame and blame is like the short game to play, and creating a space that's free of those things takes more time and attention, but it's always worth it.
I love how you help your kids internalize and look at, where they're coming from and what it means for them, outside of outer judgments, just listening. And I remember on the Starting Over house, they had like a psychologist and 2 life coaches. And one of the life coaches had a gal out with, they would do these really concrete activities. I think she might have been like the art therapist of the 2. And she had these pickets from like, white picket fence idea, and kind of a sludgy hammer with a rubber thing on it. And she had her write down everything that she blamed her mother for, like what was going wrong in her life. She blamed her mother as if her mother hadn't done this. And then each she had to talk about slowing down, and she had each thing she was blaming her mother for, she wrote on one of the pickets and then took the time to hammer it into the ground. And then, she kept going and going. It was exhausting. And she had kind of a half circle, and she goes, okay, now you're dad. And then blaming dad, each thing in her life going wrong. Why was it his fault? She had her do the pickets around herself. So now she was trapped inside this fence she had built in blaming her parents. It was such a cool, concrete, visual activity, and I just loved it. I can never forget that. And when Iana was first talking to, I thought of it and then I completely forgot it, so I'm glad it came back after you spoke, Stina.
That is a really good visual. And Iana, I'm going to bring this back to you because something that you had said recently when we spoke was that you're taking your life back inch by inch, right? And if you have that visual of the pickets all around you from your parents, your family, your people that are in your life, and you've surrounded yourself in this blame and shame, and I could just visualize you, and I know you didn't do this exercise, but this is what I have in my mind. I can just picture you like tearing out those pickets one by one, and then using those same pickets to replant those seeds and make a new garden out of it. And I, for all of Iana's amazing supporters here today, you may know that she is a lover of gardens and always is planting her seeds for new growth. And so if you didn't know that about her, now you do. But like this really made me think of like something that I can see you doing in your everyday life. That picket exercise aside, like you are doing that day in and day out to release yourself from that blame and shame. And so it's been a beautiful process to watch. I'm sure everyone here can agree. And I really love watching you take back your life inch by inch and planting those seeds. So for everyone here, thank you so much for coming to today's conversation, for supporting Iana, for supporting all of us, for showing up and sharing your own insights and stories. We love having you here. Iana, I want to give you a moment to let people know where they can connect with you. How can they reach out to you if they want to continue this conversation or learn more?
Okay, can I respond to something that Linda was saying just now? Okay, so as Linda was talking, yes, I use garden analogies a lot. I was thinking of a plant I actually have to repot this weekend because the pot is now too small and the roots are starting to come up to the top. So that means I need to put it in a bigger pot. And I thought of, as Linda was talking, I don't know why that came to mind, but it's in a way that by carrying other people's stuff and worrying about how other people think of us or how they will perceive of us, um, we prevent ourselves from flourishing and from truly living and thriving in our lives. You know, we only have one life. You know, I have about 50 more years to live, and I don't want to live the next 50 the way I've lived the first 50. I want to live the next 50 as a blooming, blossoming field of flowers. So if that means that I have to let some people go, then by golly, they are gone, they're unfriended, X'd off. If that means I have to let some practices and some habits go, by golly, they're gone. Because when we release ourselves from all those people and things that hold us down and hold us in place, we allow ourselves to experience everything that is possible. And so, yes, I have pulled out all of the pickets. I have torn up other people's instruction manual for how I should live my life. And my life, I'm living my life by my own instruction manual. So if you have another instruction manual, that's on you. I have my instruction manual, and that's what I'm living by. And you know, we do that because we love people, we love our family, and we want them to be happy in how we're living our lives, but that's not our job in this life. Our job in this life is to live fully and freely and enjoy it. So where can people connect with me? Right here on LinkedIn. If you just send me a message, I will message you back. It may not be immediately. Give me about 2 days because my life is pretty hectic. So message me right here on LinkedIn and I will be sure to return your message. Thank you all for tuning in today.
It's been a pleasure having you, Iana. It's been wonderful diving into the blame and shame conversation a little bit more today. I know there are so many other ways that we could have gone with this conversation, and it was perfect just as it was. We want to thank everybody for joining us today. Again, this is a safe space, and if you feel like you want to continue this conversation with us on another high vibe conversation or more privately, here's where you can book that individual conversation to do that. If you want to catch up on some of the previous conversations, we invite you to subscribe to that YouTube channel. And if there are conversations that we have yet to have that you are interested in hearing us talk about, then please reach out and message us so that we can add that to our roster. We've got another high vibe conversation coming up next week and more to come. So stay tuned for more. You don't want to miss it. We'll say bye for now.